close your eyes and see this. You wake up in a room filled with everything you've ever wanted to be. Minimalist walls, a silent phone glowing with notifications of praise, and a calendar brimming with accomplishments. You've done it. The life you imagined. The one you constructed brick by digital brick, affirmation by algorithm. You're successful, stable, admired, and yet something is quietly rotting beneath it all. You can't place it, but it's there. Like a film of dust on glass you thought was clean. You eat, but you're not nourished. You speak, but you don't feel heard. You're surrounded by people, yet lonelier than you've ever been. You are free to choose, and yet why does it feel like every choice you make only deepens your confusion? You smile, you post, you scroll, you achieve, but deep down, a single haunting question hums beneath all the noise. Why do I feel so unreal? In a world that keeps telling me I should be happier than ever. Is it burnout? Trauma? Digital fatigue? Maybe. But what if it goes deeper? What if the modern mind, the thing you're living inside of right now, isn't broken because of you, but because of something much older, much bigger, much quieter than any therapist or productivity hack could fix? What if the very way you think has been molded, not for clarity, but for containment? Here's the paradox. Never before in history have we had so much freedom and, yet never have we felt so caged. We have information, access, voice. We can create, cancel, or recreate entire identities with the tap of a screen. But somehow, the more we refine ourselves into curated avatars of success, beauty, and cleverness, the further we drift from something unspeakably human, something ancient, something raw. Why do we talk endlessly and say nothing that touches the soul? Why do our thoughts seem like echoes of other people's words? Why do we chase novelty only to feel empty the moment we catch it? What if the problem isn't your anxiety, your attention span, or your lack of motivation, but the architecture of your mind itself? A mind that's been silently colonized, not by tyrants, but by incentives, not by evil, but by systems too vast to see. What if you are not the one thinking your thoughts? What if your mind has become a house built for someone else, and you're only renting space in it? This is the quiet war no one talks about, not between countries, but between ways of being, between the instinctive and the performative, the intuitive and the conditioned, between the mind that knows how to feel and the one that only knows how to appear, and the cost, that ancient stillness you can no longer find, the inner clarity that once whispered to your younger self when the world felt wide open, gone, drowned in distraction and digital confetti. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you had a thought that didn't feel borrowed? We wear masks so long we forget our skin underneath. We perform authenticity like it's a brand campaign. We compete to be the most mindful, the most real, while outsourcing even our self-awareness to trend cycles and filtered wisdom. And yet, when you lie awake at 2 a.m. and the glow of your screen fades into darkness, the questions come crawling back. The silence is not empty, it is full of truths you've avoided, and one truth above all rises, like smoke from a fire long smothered. Something is deeply wrong with the way we've been taught to think. But what and how did we get here? Let yourself drift into this idea that the modern mind is not just overwhelmed, it is misaligned, that it was quietly reshaped by forces that do not care whether you live deeply or die fulfilled, that your suffering, your numbness, your anxiety may not be your failure, but the predictable result of a machine you were never meant to become a part of. What if your restlessness is not dysfunction but revolt? What if the unease you feel isn't weakness, but a message from the oldest part of you, screaming through the static? This is not how we were meant to live. This is not how we were meant to think. And so, the question begins to take form not as a complaint, but as a call to awakening. Can the modern mind be unshackled from the illusions it was built upon? Let's pull back the curtain. The modern mind, your mind, isn't just a chaotic stream of thoughts. It's a structure, a system, an architecture built over time, shaped by forces invisible but powerful: technology, capitalism, history, trauma, and culture. It's not just how you think, it's what you've been trained to think is worth thinking about. This is the hidden problem. You inherited a mind shaped for survival in a world that no longer exists, then reshaped for consumption in a world that never truly cared. Carl Jung warned that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But what if we've taken this even further? What if society has built an entire framework, a marketplace, an attention economy, a value system designed not just to help us avoid our souls, but to forget we even have one? Consider this. When you were a child, your inner world was vivid, immediate, strange. You lived inside your imagination, not your feed. You felt more than you understood. You were not efficient, you were alive. But slowly, that mind was reshaped. Through schooling, media, routine praise and punishment, you learned what was useful, what was normal, what made you successful. Your soul was quietly evicted in favor of metrics, grades, status, approval, output. And the most dangerous part, it felt like growing up. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what if the modern mind was conditioned to forget the why entirely, traded it for productivity apps, self-help rituals, and the dopamine drip of a like button click? We replaced meaning with stimulation, reflection with reaction, insight with opinion. Your mind is not failing you. It is functioning perfectly within a system that rewards surface over substance. It is doing what it was trained to do: compare, conform, produce, consume, scroll. It is a well-oiled mechanism of distraction, masquerading as connection. Let's go deeper. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed we are condemned to be free, that our radical freedom is terrifying, and so we invent roles and structures to avoid the weight of true choice. In a way, society gives you those roles: pre-packaged influencer, thought leader, hustler, healer. And you wear them not because they're true, but because being undefined in a world of definitions feels like death. But what if that's the trick? What if these roles are precisely the prison? You're taught to be yourself, but only within approved templates. Be authentic, but also marketable. Be mindful, but also productive. Be vulnerable, but not too raw. What we call freedom is often just a carefully curated menu of identities, none of which allow for contradiction, ambiguity, or true silence. Arthur Schopenhauer called humans desire machines, doomed to chase satisfaction and lose it the moment it's caught. The modern mind, then, is a hypercharged engine of desire, wired by algorithms that learn exactly what to show you to keep the wheel spinning. You're not seeking truth, you're reacting to a reality that's been shaped for your reaction. Even your free time is colonized. Leisure has become optimization. Rest is now recovery, not reverence. The void that once belonged to your soul is now filled with short-form videos, ironic detachment, and spiritual quotes you scroll past before you even feel them. And in all this noise, something ancient falls silent. Viktor Frankl, survivor of the Holocaust, and author of Man's Search for Meaning, believed that man's main concern is not to gain pleasure or avoid pain, but rather to see a meaning in his life. But today, the modern mind is trained to chase pleasure, and numb pain, and meaning is reduced to aesthetic. Think about it. You curate a self that looks meaningful. Quotes, routines, gratitude journals. But the experience of meaning raw, disorienting, our lives often missing. You've become a performance of a person, an idea of a soul, a someone others can recognize, even if you no longer recognize yourself. And this is the root of the crisis. The modern mind is built to perform identity, not embody it. The deepest parts of you, your grief, your awe, your confusion, your untamed questions, those don't trend well. They don't fit in resumes, reels, or elevator pitches. So they are repressed, trimmed, or you turn them into art, or content, or silence. And what does the psyche do when its depths are denied? It fractures. It turns anxiety into identity, depression into trend, confusion into distraction, all while whispering deep beneath the noise. There is more, you are more, but you've forgotten how to find it. It's not your fault. This is what modern society rewards, not wholeness, but coherence, not presence, but performance, not truth, but the illusion of knowing. And so, your mind, this beautiful, wild, untamed force, was bent into a shape that fits a mold, and you've learned to live with that dissonance, to survive it, to thrive within it, but thriving in a system that flattens you is not liberation. It is assimilation. And the cost? You begin to distrust your own instincts. You silence thoughts before they're formed. You doubt emotions unless they can be explained. You look outward for signs of who you are, and the deeper parts of you, mystical, contradictory, begin to wither from neglect. This is not a bug in your mind. It is a design. But it can be undone. The question is, are you willing to face the consequences of waking up from it? Let's now trace what happens when you darn single quotes. Imagine walking through a city where every billboard, every screen, every passing face subtly confirms what you suspect but don't want to admit, that you must constantly prove your worth to exist. You smile, but it's hollow. You post, but feel unseen. You check the mirror, but your reflection doesn't speak back. On the surface, you function. You're employed, connected, occasionally praised. But beneath it, there's a quiet, subtle, persistent sense that something essential is missing. This ache isn't random. It's not just stress or a chemical imbalance or a bad week. It's the consequence of a mind misaligned with its nature. It's the soul's reaction to being exiled from its own home. You weren't designed for this. Evolution built the human mind for presence, for attunement with nature, for slow conversations and deep relationships, and silence broken only by the rustling of leaves or the sound of breath. Instead, you live in a digital labyrinth of urgent notifications and shallow connections, where even moments of peace are pierced by the ghost vibration of your phone. What does this do to a person? Neuroscience has a word for it: cognitive overload. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, self-awareness, and empathy, is overwhelmed. Your limbic system, designed to detect threats, is constantly activated, not by tigers or danger, but by ambiguity, social comparison, existential dread, unanswered messages. Your nervous system, already wired for vigilance, now interprets daily life as a low-grade emergency. You become tired without rest, wired but numb. Your body is still, but your mind runs marathons. And here's the sinister twist. You think this is normal because everyone around you is quietly unraveling in the same way. We've normalized this slow spiritual erosion. We even glamorize it. Call it hustle, call it ambition, call it the grind. But no one asks, what are we grinding ourselves into? When the modern mind is severed from depth, it becomes addicted to stimulation, and in a world designed for engagement, this addiction is not only fed, it's weaponized. The algorithms don't want your truth. They want your attention. And attention is most easily seized through outrage, novelty, and fear. So your psyche is conditioned to scan, react, judge, scroll, 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 never arrive, never descend into depth, never stop. And this rewiring has consequences. Your ability to focus shrinks. Studies show the average attention span has dropped precipitously in the last 2 decades. But it's not just about attention, it's about presence. You are rarely with yourself anymore. You're adjacent, hovering, distracted, existing in fragments. And what suffers in this fragmentation? Relationships become shallow. You're there, but you're not truly there. Conversations float on the surface while both parties check their phones under the table. Creativity diminishes. Original thought requires silence, space. Boredom, even conditions the modern world has rendered obsolete. Self-trust erodes. When your mind is shaped more by algorithms than introspection, your intuition goes silent. You stop knowing what you want, what you believe. Emotional intelligence atrophies. If everything is reduced to a meme, a hot take, or a soundbite, there's no room for the raw, messy, non-linear work of truly feeling. This isn't just psychological erosion. It's existential dislocation. You begin to feel like an actor in someone else's script. You perform well, even convincingly. But inside, you sense the absence of authorship. You're not living a story. You're participating in a program. This program has rules. Don't question too much. Don't slow down. Be productive. Stay relevant. Curate your pain. Monetize your joy. Compete for attention. Call it authenticity. Call it self-care. Just don't unplug long enough to really remember who you were before all this began. And here's the most disturbing part. You internalize this program as your identity. You say things like, I'm just not creative anymore. I have no attention span, or I overthink everything. But these aren't facts. They are symptoms. They are signs of a mind that has been hijacked, conditioned to fragment, perform, and comply. And over time, a deeper kind of fatigue sets in. Not just physical, not even mental, but existential fatigue, the weariness of living as someone you never truly chose to be. You may find yourself haunted by questions you try to suppress. Who am I when no one is watching? Why do I feel so far away from myself? Is this all there is? Did I miss something essential? But you distract yourself. You keep moving, because stopping means facing something ancient and unspeakable, that you have become a stranger to your own mind. And yet, there are moments when the spell breaks, in nature, perhaps, when your phone dies and the silence stretches long enough for something real to rise, or late at night, staring at the ceiling, when the masks slip and you feel the full weight of your alienation, or in moments of intense loss or love when time slows, and you touch something raw and holy beneath the noise. These moments are not anomalies. They are glimpses of what's still possible. They are signals from your deeper mind, whispering, I'm still here. I've always been here. You don't have to live this way. But here's the truth. Awareness alone is not enough. You now know the problem, you feel the ache, you've seen the cracks. But seeing is not the same as changing. And breaking free from this mental architecture is not easy. It requires rebellion. A radical departure from what you've been taught to value. A descent into discomfort. A willingness to be alone, silent, undefined. Are you ready for that? Because the next step is not easy. It demands everything you've been taught to suppress. Silence, slowness, solitude, and soul. And yet, within that rebellion lies the only path home. Let yourself drift into this idea. What if healing the modern mind isn't about becoming more, doing more, fixing more, but about subtracting, unlearning, peeling away the layers of programming until something unfiltered and ancient emerges from beneath the noise? The rebellion does not begin with a manifesto. It begins in a whisper, a refusal, a moment where you feel the absurdity of your pace, the absurdity of pretending you're okay, the absurdity of trying to win a game that makes you feel emptier the more you play it. You stop, not because the world lets you, but because some buried part of you refuses to go on like this. That is where freedom begins. But don't romanticize it. This rebellion isn't glamorous. It doesn't look good on social media. It doesn't come with applause. In fact, it feels like death at first, because that's exactly what it is. The death of your false self. You will lose things. You will lose momentum, followers, efficiency, relevance. You will lose relationships built on mutual performance. You will lose the illusion of control, and in those quiet, stripped bare moments, you will be tempted to turn back. You will ask, who am I? Without all this, you will hear the silence as rejection. You will mistake stillness for failure. And yet, if you stay, if you don't reach for the next dopamine hit, the next justification, the next distraction, you'll start to feel something strange and terrifying. You'll start to feel yourself, not the version of you that was trained to please, succeed, or survive, but the unnameable being beneath all that. That's where the true rebellion begins, not outside you, but within you. A revolt against the very architecture of the modern psyche. The philosopher Alan Watts once wrote, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." The modern mind, in its obsession with control and self-definition, has forgotten the paradox of being, that who you truly are cannot be grasped like an object. It must be lived, felt, trusted, and to return to that way of being, you must abandon the scaffolding that once held you up. So how do you begin? First, you reclaim your attention, not all of it at once, just a moment at a time. 1 minute of silence. Before you touch your phone in the morning. 1 walk without headphones. 1 conversation where you actually listen without rehearsing your reply. 1 evening where you let yourself feel boredom instead of escaping it. Each act is small, seemingly insignificant, but together they form a quiet revolution. Because attention is not just a tool, it's the seat of your power. Whatever you attend to, you give life to, and the moment you begin choosing where to place it, you start to become sovereign again. Second, you learn to sit in discomfort. The modern mind has been trained to pathologize discomfort. Lonely, text someone, anxious, scroll, insecure, post something clever. But what if the discomfort was the doorway? Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The unprocessed emotions, the grief you've masked with productivity, the rage you've swallowed in silence. the desires you've labeled too much. They're not there to punish you, they're signals. And when you finally turn toward them, not to analyze, but to witness, they begin to dissolve, not through force, but through understanding. This is inner work. Not glamorous, not linear, not hashtag, but this is where you meet your real self. Third, you deconstruct your borrowed beliefs. You must ask, whose values am I living? Who told me success looks like this? Who benefits from my self-doubt? Who profits from my disconnection? When you start peeling away the beliefs that were implanted by culture, capitalism, family, trauma, you begin to encounter silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of truth. And in that space, something begins to move. A clarity that isn't intellectual, but cellular. You begin to remember, not in words, but in feeling, the way a sunset feels when you don't photograph it. The way grief humbles you without asking for permission. The way you laugh from your belly with someone who sees you. The way silence cradles you when you stop resisting it. These are not spiritual cliches. These are antidotes. They're signs that your soul is still alive beneath the machinery. That the essence of you untouched by trauma, algorithms, or ambition has not been extinguished, only buried. But here's the key. You cannot do this work alone forever. Solitude is necessary, but isolation is dangerous. You need people, not an audience, but a tribe. People who reflect your depth. People who remind you that you're not crazy for feeling out of place in a world this numb. People who crave truth more than applause, because collective healing requires collective resistance. And when enough minds begin to break their own programming, something shifts. Not just individually, but culturally. What once seemed impossible rest, slowness, soulfulness becomes contagious. And slowly, the modern mind begins to remember its ancient roots. So no, this rebellion doesn't look like fire and fury. It looks like someone sitting quietly with their thoughts and not fleeing. It looks like turning off your phone and turning toward your grief. It looks like writing a poem instead of a post. It looks like leaving a job that pays well but kills your spirit. It looks like walking away from people who love the version of you that isn't real. It looks like freedom, but not the loud kind, the deep kind, the kind that reweaves you from the inside out. And when you've tasted even a moment of that freedom, you realize you were never broken, you were just buried. And the rebellion is not about becoming something new. It's about unbecoming everything you were taught to be, so that you can return to everything you already are. Close your eyes and see. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Not a literal one, but a threshold, where everything you've believed about yourself begins to tremble. You feel lighter, not because you've finally found the right answers, but because you've stopped needing them. Because the weight of constant striving has finally slipped from your shoulders. Because, for the first time, you're not chasing peace, you're letting it come to you. And as you stand there unmasked, unarmed, unscripted, you see what you couldn't before. You were never meant to be a machine. This truth is simple, but it lands like thunder. You were never meant to run on endless input. You were never meant to calculate your worth by output. You were never meant to split your consciousness into curated personas and call that connection. You were never meant to live in your head. You were not your productivity. You were not your anxiety. You were not your perfectly optimized morning routine. You are not your thoughts. This is the final, most dangerous illusion of the modern mind, that the voice in your head is you, but who is the one hearing it? What part of you listens quietly as your thoughts spiral into fear, fantasy, judgment, or desire. That silent awareness that is you, the witness, the seer behind the stream of noise. The being that existed before you learned your name, and once you begin to identify with that stillness not as an idea, but as your truest nature, everything changes. This is not philosophy. It's not even spirituality. It's reality unfiltered, untouched. It is the raw awareness that children live in before they're taught to perform. It is the calm you feel staring at the ocean, where your identity dissolves into something vast. It is the reason words fail in moments of overwhelming beauty or grief, because something deeper than intellect has awakened, and that something has always been there. It's the part of you that watched, helpless when your joy was conditioned out of you. The part that knew something was wrong, even when the world applauded you. The part that whispered there must be more than this. Even as you went through the motions, that part is still alive. It has no name, no brand, no goals. It doesn't want to win. It wants to be. But here's the paradox. This truth cannot be reached by effort. It cannot be downloaded, memorized, or proven. It can only be remembered. That's the final joke. The cosmic twist in all of this. You've never been disconnected. You've only been distracted. The modern mind, in its frenzy to understand, control, and label, has built walls around something infinite. It has confused knowledge for wisdom, information for integration, performance for presence, and now the path forward is not about learning something new. It's about shedding everything that blocks what's already within you. Silence is not empty. Slowness is not laziness. Sensitivity is not weakness. And not knowing is not failure, it's freedom. Because when you truly stop needing to prove, achieve, or understand, something ancient begins to breathe again inside you. You look at a tree and you don't analyze it. You just feel its presence. You cry for no reason and realize that joy and grief are not opposites. You stop trying to heal and notice you already are. This is what it means to come home, not to a belief system, not to a method, but to the quiet, pulsing aliveness that was always there, waiting beneath the static. The poet Rumi said, "You wander from room to room hunting for the diamond necklace that is already around your neck. And now you know, all the striving, the burnout, the self-improvement, the chasing of meaning, none of it was a mistake. It was part of the spiral. But the truth is simpler than you ever imagined. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are already whole. You just forgot. So now the real work begins. Not to change yourself, but to trust yourself. To remember, moment by moment, that the noise in your head is not who you are. That beneath your wounds is wisdom. Beneath your performance is presence. Beneath your modern mind is an ancient soul, unshaken by the chaos of this age. And as you begin to live from this place, not as a concept, but as a reality, everything begins to soften. You stop needing to dominate your time and start dancing. With it, you stop needing to optimize every hour and begin inhabiting each one. You stop seeing others as threats or mirrors and begin seeing them as co-travelers on this strange sacred path. That is the end of the illusion. The modern mind was never meant to rule you. It was meant to serve your soul. And now that you see clearly, the choice is yours. Will you keep running the program? Or will you return to the body, to the breath, to the beauty that needs no explanation? The mind will fight back. It will tempt you with noise, with urgency, with distraction. It will whisper that this peace is impractical, irresponsible, unsafe. But now you know better. Now you have felt it, and once you taste truth, you can never fully return to sleep. So let the world move fast, let the noise swell, let others race toward destinations they cannot name. You walk differently now, not because you've escaped the world, but because you've remembered who you are in the midst of it. A stillness in the storm, a presence in the performance, a being awake in a world of minds. The truth about the modern mind is that it was never the enemy, only the mask, and now the mask has cracked. Welcome home.